balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. It's his way back. Walk the ball. Chris Taylor.
Hi, everyone, and welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Matthew Moreno, and joining me again tonight is our managing editor, Blake Williams. Blake, we're happy to be doing a Sunday show after a win, which I know over the past week we're a little bit of a few and far between. And you were out at the stadium this afternoon covering the game for us. Did you feel maybe any sense of relief that the Dodgers avoided being swept?
Kind of, but mostly because my dad's a Met fan, so I didn't want to have to listen to him bragging about that. But it was good to see them get back into the win column in a big way. So yeah, can't be too mad about that.
Yeah, that's all. That always helps. I imagine it was a difficult past 2 days for you then, with the Mets picking up 2 wins over the Dodgers. But hey, like we said, they avoided the sweep, and it would have been the Mets' first time sweeping at Dodger Stadium since 1989. So that would have been a little brutal for you to have to wear with your dad. But we want to thank everyone who's watching this live on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. As a reminder, if you are a YouTube viewer, please remember to hit the like button on this video. Also, subscribe to the channel and ring the notification bell. And hey, if you're not on YouTube right now, set some time aside to come on over, subscribe to the channel, ring the notification bell. You'll get all the videos that we're doing, like this one, and daily updates throughout the week, and player interviews when we're at games. And we're also available wherever you get your podcasts. So a big thank you to our audio listeners as well. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and review us. Our plan for tonight is to discuss Tyler Glasnow's dominant start, Andy Pages, Shohei Ohtani, look back on kind of the homestand as a whole that we, kind of alluded to was difficult for the Dodgers, and also address maybe some of the panic that set in amongst the fans. And we have a Walker Buehler update that we'll get to at the end. And of course, we'll finish by answering questions. And just a quick reminder, if you want us to make sure we answer your question, or you want us to discuss a new topic right away, Super Chat is definitely the way to go. That helps us grow and support the show, which we certainly appreciate. All right, Blake. So let's begin with your guy Tyler Glasnow bouncing back, and I feel like that's not entirely fair because his last start, Dave Roberts did say that Glasnow had been under the weather. Glasnow didn't use it as an excuse by any means, but the results of it were not what we had quickly become accustomed to for him. But today against the Mets, he goes 8 shutout innings, finished with 10 strikeouts. Blake, your confidence and optimism in Glasnow is certainly well known. I know you've written about it. You've expressed it on different shows that we've done. What did you see from him today?
He looked like himself again. And I think to his credit, like you said, not using the illness as an excuse. Today, he also told media that he was kind of feeling sick when he had his start in Minnesota too, where he struck out 14 hitters over 7 innings. So Glasnow really didn't want to use that as an excuse for his last outing. That was poor. And he tried to make some adjustments and get back on track, and it certainly worked. He had everything working for him today. 8 shutout innings with 10 strikeouts is about everything you want from a starting pitcher. And the only time he really fell into some trouble in the game was his final inning, and he was able to get a strikeout to pitch out of it. So it's you just saw everything you wanted to see from an ace. And this is why the Dodgers paid the high price to acquire him. This is why they signed him to an extension. This is what the team has needed for quite a while, and it's good to actually see them have it again.
Yeah, real quick, I will pause the show because we do have our first Super Chat. Noah says, nice haircut, and I think he's talking to me, although you can't see Blake's under his hat, but Blake also did get a fresh cut. We realized that when we zoomed the other night. Noah also says, imagine where we'd be if no Ohtani. I think that's a fair point on one hand. I think also, I don't know if your intention was to sort of diminish what Mookie has done this season. Freddie Freeman has obviously struggled a little bit. We're going to get to that. We're also going to get to Ohtani as well. But Blake, where do you think the Dodgers would be if they didn't have him as their DH right now?
3rd place, probably. I mean, his production's been great, and they probably would have done something good to replace him. JD probably would have been back, but he's of course dealing with the injury, so he didn't appear for the Mets series. So maybe even worse than that. But yeah, Ohtani has kind of helped them quite a bit.
And real quick before we get back on topic, Hawaiian Kira says, is that the Jackie Robinson is it season stadium giveaway hat?
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Blake, go ahead. I know that you were impressed.
It is. It's got the 42. It's pretty nice quality overall for a stadium giveaway, I feel like. So they did pretty well with this one.
All right. Well, Noah, thank you for the compliments on the haircut. Thank you more so for the super chat. Let's get back to Glasnow. Anthony tweeted it today before the game and Dave Roberts has also mentioned in the past that, with this was a type of game for the Dodgers where if you're an ace of a staff, which, I know you view Glass, I mean, he is really for this team. It's one where they step up and really give the team, some length and just a strong start. That was certainly what Glasnow provided the Dodgers, but there were two things for me that stuck out from today's start. And one, I was surprised that Dave Roberts left Glasnow in to pitch the eighth inning. The Dodgers at that point were already up 10-0. And just seeing, I know the bullpen has had its trouble, if you will, and we've discussed that, and we probably will touch on it at some point throughout this show tonight. But a 10-0 lead in the eighth inning, that's typically a point where the Dodgers are going to pull their starter. Were you as surprised as I was, or did you see? I mean, it's easy to justify the decision, obviously, and explain it, but could you understand why Glasnow was still in the game?
I wasn't too surprised by it because up until that point, it was really low stress innings for him. Like he wasn't dealing with much traffic throughout the night. He didn't have to go to his best stuff all game. So he was kind of cruising up until that point. And then after the game, Dave Roberts justified it by saying he thought it would be really beneficial to give the bullpen 2 days off with the off day tomorrow instead of just like 1 day. But prior to the game, Roberts also said like all his best relievers were available and he was going to do whatever it takes to win the game. So I feel like it's just he probably felt Glasnow was the best person to go in that situation there. You kind of have to reward your ace for going out and having a strong game like that. Like no pitcher wants to come out of the game. And if you're taking a guy out with like 70 pitches, or I think he might have been around like 75, 80 at that point, like it's going to discourage them a little. Like they want to be in there. They're competitive. They're trying to do their best. Glasnow wants to throw a complete game every time out, even if he's not going to do that realistically. But I think it made a lot of sense to try and push him a little, see what you can get out of him. He was on a little extra rest there. And yeah, it made a lot of sense for me. And of course, if they pulled him out and then the bullpen struggled, it's why did you take Glasnow out? He was cruising and all the complaints about that. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword there. Like I think Roberts did the right thing.
Yeah, I don't think it was an egregious decision by any means. More than anything, like I said, I was surprised just because it's typically not how the Dodgers have sort of operated. Even if, we've seen in the past where a starting pitcher, whether it's Kershaw, and maybe Kershaw has more injury concern. He is older than Glasnow, obviously, but where a pitcher is dominating. We've seen it in the past, I think, with Walker Buehler as well, where, they're pitching well, but they still get removed from the game. We do have another super chat, but we need to do a conversion on this. Thank you for that. There isn't a comment or a question. I don't know if that was an accident. So if you do have one, then just throw it in the chat as a regular comment and we'll address it. But thank you for this super chat as well. Going back to Glasnow, the second thing that I was surprised with. So first, it was a little bit that he was left in the game just because of how the Dodgers have typically operated in the past. But then the Mets go and load the bases on him. And I thought at that point, yes, there's 2 outs. There had already been the initial sort of mound visit from Will Smith to try to get Glasnow to sort of lock back in, get out of the inning. Didn't necessarily work. Bases loaded. Dave Roberts still left him in. Obviously, Glasnow rewarded that faith with getting his 10th strikeout of the game, kept the shutout intact. He had some, show of emotion from before he walked off the mound, which was nice to see. He is a Southern California kid, grew up a Dodger fan, so that was a cool moment for him. But where did you fall then on that decision with Glasnow still staying in the game?
I was more surprised by that, but I wasn't totally against it. It was a 10-0 game. Like, I think it's good to see your ace try and work through something like that. And it kind of maybe prepares them a little more for the future. You're not really like playing to win the game right there at that moment. Like even a grand slam, the Mets would still be down by 6 runs. So like, it wasn't really a pivotal moment there. So I think it was maybe just kind of like pushing him through, seeing if he can get through it. And it worked out and he kind of rewarded them for it. But like the worst case scenario is the Mets are still trailing by 6 runs. And then like the home run killed the rally kind of joke there. So like I was surprised by it, but I kind of get it at the same time. Like no point in using a reliever for 1 inning if Glasnow, or 1 out if Glasnow can get out of it there. And if he didn't, like if he allowed a single or a double or something, I'm sure the reliever would have come in after that. But yeah, I kind of like the aggressiveness from Dave Roberts there. If it was a closer game, I and he did that, I probably would have been all over it, saying it was a bad decision and everything, and very critical of it. But with that lead there, like, I have no problems with it.
You see, you say that, but if Glasnow gives up a grand slam and then a reliever comes in and they give up a 2-run home run, all of a sudden it's a ball game. You still have a whole ninth inning to play. But no, I mean, I do. All things considered, I do agree with you. Like I said, more than anything, what just struck me is it's not necessarily how the Dodgers have sort of operated, but the circumstances did make sense. And like you said, and Dave Roberts mentioned, now getting the bullpen basically 2 full days of rest because the Dodgers are off on Monday before beginning their road trip certainly is going to be beneficial for them. Another highlight from Sunday's win was Andy Pages first hitting his first extra base hit, which was a double, and then following that later in the game with a home run, which was the first of his career. Blake, I know.
Real quick, that was his second double. He had one on Friday, I believe.
My mistake. Thank you for catching that. So not quite as historic of a day for Pages, but hey, still his first career home run. Blake, you were in the clubhouse after the game. Pages spoke with you guys. What was that? What did he have to say? And I think he got the home run ball back, right?
He did get the home run ball back right after someone asked the question about him getting the home run ball back. He said, "I think we got it. I don't know where it is." And then John Suhu brought it over to him. And so that was kind of a cool moment. We have the video up on the YouTube page right now. But he kind of didn't say a whole lot. Like, he said he was excited and happy. It was an honor to hit home runs off. He called the best players in the world, which he's correct there. But yeah, he's very lightly spoken person. So he kind of like kept it cool. Dave Roberts said he was a pretty even keel person as well. So his interview is up. Anyone can go watch it. But yeah, he was pretty nonchalant about it.
We do have to pause the show for some big breaking news, and apologies to all the other super chats we get, but this one trumps them all, at least right now. Roger Williams, who may or may not be related to Blake Williams, is saying we did win the series. Looking at the schedule, seeing that the Dodgers only won one of the 3 games, I'm inclined to, this leads me to believe that Roger is talking about his Mets. So Blake, you avoided the sweep, but you're not getting away from your dad bringing up a series win.
Yeah, when they make the playoffs, he can start bragging to me again.
All right, well, there you go. Roger, thank you for that. We appreciate the super chat. Getting back to Pages, he had a single in his first at bat of his MLB debut, and so that was certainly encouraging. And he had been called up to really, sort of provide a spark for the bottom of the Dodgers lineup. Hadn't necessarily gone that way heading into this game, but that, like I said, that changed kind of in dramatic fashion with the double and the home run. I think we should also credit, Gavin Lux for the bottom of the lineup production as well. He went he didn't have a hit, but he drew 2 walks, and he also scored 2 runs. And so Lux and Pages were kind of the spark that the Dodgers have been looking for. Do you feel like maybe there's reason to believe that this can, hopefully, and in Lux's case, maybe improve where he is getting a hit, but can this kind of be sustainable? Is this what the Dodgers need to sort of get back on track?
I would hope walking is sustainable for him. That's like the main starter point there. So yes, I do think he's going to be better than what he's shown at some point. Like, I've consistently said that. I still question his fit on the team as far as like defensive positioning and all that, how they're dealing with that. Like, I don't think Mookie is their long-term answer at shortstop, and they're going to have to figure that out at some point, which probably pushes Lux out of the picture there. But I do think he's going to be better offensively than what he's shown. He is coming back from the major injury. He missed the entire year. Like, I don't think anyone really expected him to come out and be the same player he was. So for him to have a solid night, like, it's encouraging to see, and you kind of hope it keeps going forward. I'd hope so, but I would have hoped he was better up to this point already as well. So we'll have to see with him. And then with Pages, like, there's just so much talent there. I think it's pretty easy to say, like, he's going to keep it going.
Yeah, so let's finish really quick with Pages. What do you make of kind of, it hasn't been quite a full week by any means, but his first sort of week up at the major league level? We saw, the early high, like I said, the base hit. First pitch he swung at it, got a base hit. Then some struggles, some strikeouts were racking up. But now today with the 2 extra base hits, the double and the home run, what's to make of kind of the first impression he's sort of made and what he can kind of provide the Dodgers?
I think overall it's been okay. Like, I know the saying is hitting is contagious, and I think that might have been part of it. Like, you're putting kind of pressure on a rookie to help carry the bottom of the lineup there when they haven't been hitting well. And I don't think that was necessarily fair to him. Like, when we saw other players around him producing, he was able to come out and produce. I think he showed some of the concerns he's had as a prospect throughout his career with the strikeout issues. Like, he's always going to be a guy who's going to strike out a good amount, and he has some trouble with the fastball up and in. So he's going to have to adjust to that, and major leaguer are going to take advantage of that when they're pitching to him. So there's adjustments to be made. Like, I don't think it would have been fair to say like he's going to come up and save the season kind of thing, or the offense at least, or anything like that. But he showed enough potential to, I think, warrant a chance of staying around longer, even when Jason Hayward comes back. If they don't decide to do that, I don't think he's shown enough where like we have to be outraged if they send him down. Like, he's been good. He's impressed mostly, but he hasn't been like the amazing player that needs to absolutely stay up no matter what. So I think that's like fair expectations for him, and kind of what they were hoping for. Like, just provide a spark. Don't be anything too much. Don't try and carry the team. So I'm mostly impressed with him.
All right, real quick before we move on from Pages, Bob Nightingale says Pages' swing reminds me of Navy Baez a little bit. Bob later corrected himself to say he meant Javi Baez, and I just want to point out that this was extremely on brand for Bob Nightingale. No disrespect whatsoever, but if you follow him on Twitter, you know that some typos tend to happen, and hey, nobody's perfect, so that's okay.
Yeah, for sure. I will say also with Pages, like, his defense has been very impressive. He has stopped a few players from trying to take an extra base hit on him just with the threat of his arm out there, and I've definitely enjoyed that aspect of having him.
Yeah. And also real quick, I was seeing questions asking if the super chat from Roger Williams was really Blake's dad, and I can confirm that he is. Blake can confirm that he is, and Roger Williams also is saying, yes, I'm Blake's dad. I did grow up as a Mets fan. I guess you guys can feel my pain.
What if I don't confirm it?
Then sources tell me that it's pretty accurate that Roger Williams is your dad. So it was a historic day for Shohei Ohtani, who now has hit the most home runs in MLB history by a Japanese-born player. Ohtani had previously tied Hideki Matsui on April 12th, now passed him 9 days later, which obviously was today, with his 176th career home run. Like, a lot has been written and said about Ohtani's struggles with runners in scoring position, and we're going to sort of touch on that and line up things. But he's sort of quietly putting together another monster season if you look at basically every other stat.
Yeah, like, he's been pretty much everything they've wanted from him and more. You can, of course, pick out the runners in scoring position stuff, but that was a whole kind of team thing, and Ohtani has started to show some life there. So, yeah, he's been pretty incredible so far, and I think he'll just keep getting better. Like, it's hard to put into words how good he actually is until you watch him every single day, and then it's still hard to put into words how good he is. Like, his power, his speed, his contact ability, like, just everything he does on a field is really incredible. So for him to set the record so quickly, I think it was about half the games that Matsui did it in. Like, he's just a special talent, and it's pretty amazing that we get to watch him play in a Dodger uniform for the next decade.
Yeah, and I think, credit to Ohtani for obviously achieving this, and we'll get into his comments right now in a second. But it should also be noted that there can be some sense of relief. Maybe take a deep breath. Everybody can relax because the home run ball was authenticated by the fan who caught it, and they decided to keep it. So there's not going to be anything sort of lost in translation this time around. If you missed it, the Dodgers and Ohtani made good on the fan that caught his first home run ball with the Dodgers. Herself and I don't forget if it was her boyfriend or husband, but they were invited back to a game, and I think they had some other either family members or friends with them. They got to meet Ohtani, which that turned into a whole fiasco because of, I think, was just like an innocent sort of mistake with translation, maybe a misunderstanding. Things were assumed a little bit, but that doesn't appear to be happening this time. But Blake, what did Ohtani tell you guys about passing Matsui and now coming after Dave Roberts, if you will?
Yeah, so Ohtani said he was pretty happy and relieved to end up hitting that homer. Like you said, it took him more than a week to do it, and I'm sure it was kind of getting to him a little bit there. So Ohtani is another guy who doesn't say a whole lot, but he did say he was relieved. And then he was asked about if he wants to match Matsui's postseason record next for 10 homers there. And he said, first, I'm focused on catching my manager's record because Dave Roberts owns the Dodgers home run record among Japanese-born players with 7. So Ohtani is 2 behind him, and I'm sure he'll catch up at some point here pretty soon.
Do you think Ohtani reaches that? Does he hit 3 home runs before? Well, no, April ending, that would be too quick. How middle of May? Do you think he gets there?
I was kind of thinking middle of May is his bobblehead night, May 16th. I think that would be pretty cool for him to do that, but I don't know if we only want to see Ohtani hit 3 homers in the next 3 weeks. So I think he's going to go on a tear here soon and hit like 5 in the next few weeks.
That would be crazy. That'd be fun to see. Sort of keeping with Ohtani, but also expanding the conversation a little bit into the Dodgers lineup, at least the top third of it. I feel like there have been a lot of external discussions of late as to whether or not the Dodgers need to make a change with the lineup order at the top. I think the most obvious would be to move up Freddie Freeman to second. And while a lot of the spotlight has been on Ohtani, and as we mentioned, his struggles with hitting with runners in scoring position, Freeman went into a skid of his own that included going hitless, I think, in 3 games in a row. He was changing his pregame routine. He took batting practice on the field and before a day game, which he usually does not do. Blake, where are you with the lineup order?
I wouldn't make any changes to it at this point. I mean, I think they went through the struggles, but that's going to happen no matter what order you have. Like, I don't think batting Freeman second and Ohtani third is going to would have completely changed the outlook of those struggles at that point. Like, Freddie Freeman said his issues were mechanical, nothing about like mental side of it or just where he's hitting or anything like that. If anything, I'd maybe move Teoscar up just a little more consistently in the lineup. He seems to be one of their better run producers, driving guys in more. So that's probably the main change I'd make. If they were going to do anything else like a little more drastic, I'd probably move Will Smith into the 3 hole and Freddie Freeman into the 4 spot, just so you're kind of breaking up the lefties and righties a little more. I know Dave Roberts loves to do that, and Will Smith has been pretty phenomenal this year. So I think if you went like that, you get Will Smith 4 or 3 righty, and then you get Freddie lefty, and then Teoscar righty, and then Muncy lefty. So I think it kind of works out there pretty well, of course, with Mookie and Ohtani in the top 2 spots. But I don't think any of that's going to happen. Dave Roberts is just going to kind of run with the group that he's had and has used pretty much all year. And I think it's going to end up fine in the long run. I don't think there's too much into lineup construction to begin with. Like, if you batted Ohtani 6th, he would still be really good and the team would still be really good. So I just don't think there's any like real reason to make a major change at this moment.
So related to this, a super chat from Laura, which thank you for that. She's wondering, the team goes as Freddie goes. Do you agree with that sentiment? Because a lot of times we hear from Dave Roberts that Mookie Betts is a spark for them. I think it's easy to say that because he's in the leadoff spot of the lineup, obviously, but also Mookie is dynamic. He can hit for power. He can also just get on base, and he has enough speed to at least be a threat for stolen bases. But Laura's asking specifically about Freeman. Do you think he's maybe the straw that stirs the proverbial drink?
I think with Freeman, we've seen a lot this week that he came up with runners in scoring position and wasn't able to drive them in. So it might feel like that a little more, but I think honestly, like the team's going to go as the top 3 go. Like they're the superstars. They're going to be the ones producing the most. If Mookie Betts is on fire, he's probably going to be the one carrying the team pretty much most nights. If Ohtani's the one who's on fire at that moment, like it's going to be him doing it. And Freddie Freeman certainly has the ability to do it as well. So there might be some truth to that. Yeah. But I think it can be up to any of them as the team goes. Like we saw to begin the year, it was Mookie Betts who was just hitting out of this world, and the Dodgers were playing really well. And we haven't seen it as much with the Angels and Ohtani because they were a far less talented team, but he has definitely shown the ability to carry a team. And I'm sure if all 3 of those guys are hitting well, the Dodgers probably won't lose many games. And if none of them are really hitting, then they're probably not going to win many games. And that's kind of what we saw over the last week.
Now, I remember during the offseason we were discussing sort of once Ohtani, it was clear that he had signed. The lineup construction was a big talking point early on before we even saw the Dodgers play a single, spring training game, much less regular season. And you and I were sort of on the same page of kicking around the idea of maybe having Ohtani hit leadoff. Is that not so much as a knee-jerk reaction to what's happened recently this past week, which we'll get into kind of the homestand summary in April as a whole in a few minutes. But is that something that you just you don't think the Dodgers should consider necessarily exploring at this point anymore?
I would love Ohtani leading off. I think he would be great there. I like the idea of getting him more at bats than anyone else. I just don't think it's something they would actually end up doing. And that's kind of what I said in the off season when they were talking about the lineup order and all that. I like the idea of a power hitter in the first spot, especially with his speed. I think he has game-changing ability. We've already seen how many extra base hits he's had this year. And especially at the time when he was struggling a bit with runners in scoring position, that might have been the best chance to actually try it out. But I don't think they're going to move Mookie out of the leadoff spot. And Mookie doesn't deserve to be demoted or anything either. He's having a terrific year as well. So I really like the concept and the idea. I'm more against the traditional leadoff hitter of just being a contact hitter who gets on base and has speed. I want the best hitters at the top two spots in the lineup. And that's just kind of how I feel with Ohtani there as the leadoff guy. I think he would suit it really well for what I look for in a leadoff hitter. But yeah, Mookie Betts is going to stay there. And it's probably not really a debate at all for Dave Roberts.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think, look, and you're saying you don't necessarily want the speed guy slapping in the leadoff spot. Mookie's providing some power. I know he cooled off since his crazy stretch that he went on, but that was to sort of be expected. But the power threat certainly is still there. That's not anything you can sort of just take for granted or assume he's not going to potentially hit one out of the park. But yeah, I mean, I think the lineup discussion was interesting, and to your point, and Dave Roberts said, and Freddie Freeman said, a lot of the quote unquote lineup struggles were just a result of individual guys going through things. Freddie Freeman typically doesn't slump the way that we just saw him. Maybe he'll have one or two bad games, but to have three in a row is not really like him. He got back on track Sunday with a couple doubles. And so, yeah, I mean, I think if he, like you said, if the top three hitters hit the way that things are expected, that the lineup won't necessarily be of much concern sort of moving forward, at least the top third. The bottom, there's still a little bit of work to be done there.
There's some chat about where Ohtani was hitting with the Angels. He mostly hit second, but he did hit leadoff and third from time to time as well.
Yeah. Thanks for catching that. So let's kind of put a bow on everything. The Dodgers went disappointing 3-6 on their homestand, but they're still in first place of the NL West, one game ahead of the Padres. And overall, they, as we're recording this, they're 13-11 this season. And even with their win on Sunday, as your dad pointed out, they lost the series to the Mets. They've lost 3 series in a row. That's kind of stirred up a lot of concern about the team just because of how the games had sort of gone. And I know April isn't over yet, but I did want to go back and see how the Dodgers have done during the first month of the season in years past. And I started with 2014 just because I feel like that's when their NL West dominance obviously began. So through the end of April in 2014, the Dodgers were just 15-12. So, they're pretty much around that pace right now. In 2015, they were 13-8. 2016, they went 12-13. And that month actually ended with a 6-game losing streak that included being swept by the Marlins. So that was rough. 2017, they were 14-12. 2018, they were 12-16. 2019, which seems to be kind of the only outlier, they were 20-12 after April. 2021, they were 16-11. I skipped 2020, obviously, because they weren't playing baseball in April, and that season was just different in its own right. 2022, they were 13-7. Last year, they were 16-13 heading into May. So as you could see, really only 2019 was kind of the only time they've been dominant, if you will, to start the season. They were okay in 2022 at 13-7. I suppose 16-11 in 2021 is right around that same level. But how do you look at some of their struggles and what it might mean or not mean for October? Because I think that's obviously the biggest concern for everybody right now, even though, like I said, April is not even over yet.
Yeah, if the playoffs have proven anything recently, it's that the regular season doesn't really matter at all. You just need to be good enough to get a ticket into the postseason, and then anything can happen. if you're basing what the Dodgers are going to do in October based on what they're doing in April, you're going to be very wrong most of the time. I'd say like 99% of the time to that point. Like, it's just, there's so little correlation to April baseball to October baseball. Like, the team's going to look way different. They're going to make trades at the trade deadline. They're going to have guys coming up. They're going to have guys get injured. It's just, there's so much that happens. And then adding that into the randomness of the postseason, like random guys getting hot at the right time, like we saw with the Braves do. It's just, there's no correlation at all. We could see Gavin Lux end up hitting 500 throughout the postseason and just carry them to a World Series, like what happened with the Braves when they won. So it's just, there's nothing more to say about it really than it doesn't matter at all.
At the risk of me like trying to play, maybe both sides of the argument, if you will, like on one hand, I can see I can understand looking for trends, seeing what's maybe emerging and it is still early in the season, but seeing what is sort of starting to emerge already. If, in Chris Taylor's case, is that a carryover from previous years, or, maybe Kike Hernandez, James Outman, like stuff like that. Like, if there are concerning trends, I think it's worth kind of documenting them, if you will, keeping note of them and looking at what it might mean for October. I agree with you though. Like, there's nothing that happens in April, frankly, even September, that fully guarantees what's going to unfold in the postseason, for better or worse. That's just the reality. That's not to say I see a comment, everything isn't necessarily fine right now, but I also don't think it's time to, fully go into panic mode and say, well, because the Dodgers are, 13-11 right now in April, they're not going to succeed in October. Like, there isn't that, like you said, the direct correlation. If you want to look at last year's World Series champions, which was Blake's Texas Rangers, they were 17-12 after April, so credit to them. In 2022, Scott's Houston Astros were 15-13 heading into May. If you want to go back to the Braves in 2021, they were 12-14 after April. So as you could see, and as Blake explained, like, there isn't any sort of guaranteed correlation from April to October. I think too, though, even if you look at, somebody like Kike Hernandez, who maybe isn't having the best start to the regular season, he struggled last year. And I know that he, attributed some of that to having the double hernia surgery that he needed and was those injuries that he was playing through. He's somebody who, and Blake, I know you and I will disagree on this, but I believe in the clutch gene, and I think that exists for October baseball. And I think Kike is somebody who has shown an ability to play better in the postseason than the regular season. So that's a factor. Like you said, if you want to look at Gavin Lux, like, he is playing his first season since missing all of last year. And so, he could be going through some struggles now before finding it kind of later in the year. And so it's tough. Like, and we've gotten a lot. We've seen you and I, kind of manage the Twitter account for the website, and so we see a lot of the responses, especially when games this past week. You were getting the brunt of that as you're tweeting. The Mets lead is growing, and the Dodgers are losing to the Nationals, and people are flipping out. I just don't think that there's necessarily reason for full-blown panic right now. And if you want to be a little bit concerned, I can understand that. Like, Ryan Brazier, like you love relief pitchers because they're so volatile. We're seeing that right now with Brazier. And so, maybe he's not somebody that you're going to be able to rely on in October. But hey, there's also the trade deadline coming up when the Dodgers will be able to address some of their needs. And at that point where we've had multiple months, a much larger sample size to sort of figure out how things might be projecting in the fall.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say, like, the team has flaws. Every team's going to have some flaws. No team is perfect. It's fair to note those struggles, what's the good and the bad from the team. You can recognize that they're not playing well in a particular area, but also say, like, they have time to address it. They're probably going to end up fixing some of the things that is wrong and go into October with a different outlook than they currently have at this moment. There's just so much time left and so much stuff that can change in a baseball season, even from day to day. Like, in 2021, the Dodgers had Max Muncy at first base heading into the playoffs, and that same day, the last day of the season, they didn't end up having him. So there's just so much that changes over a long season. There's no real point in dissecting it too much from the sense of how much could it cost them in the playoffs. I know I mentioned the Braves earlier, but their biggest flaw was their outfield in the year they won. They lost Ronald Acuna to an injury. Some of their other guys weren't producing. They went out, they traded for Jock Peterson, Jorge Soler, and I think Adam Duvall that year. And those guys helped carry them along with Eddie Rosario, who was not a very good hitter to begin with. And it kind of propelled them into the World Series. And they ended up winning it, of course, with those four guys helping them out a ton. So it's just, you don't want to put too much stock into it. It's fair to note that they're not playing well in some areas. Like, I'm worried about Mookie's defense at shortstop for the long term and how it holds up there. I think he might keep getting better, though, at the same time. So there's no real reason to panic about it at this moment. I would love to see them trade for Willy Adames. I've talked about that a ton, and I'm going to keep bringing it up. But it's not going to happen at this point. So you just kind of have to wait and be patient and actually end up seeing what happens in October.
Yeah. And all of that being said, what would you say right now? And I mean, I probably know the answer, but what's the biggest concern for this team as it stands right now?
The bullpen, I think. I don't love relievers, as you said I do. I am very anti-reliever with how volatile they are. But at the same time, Ryan Brazier had a 9 ERA when the Dodgers acquired him, and then he became their best reliever. So anything can turn around kind of at any moment. They can make a change. They can figure stuff out. The Dodgers usually end up having a pretty good bullpen, even if people don't love to admit it. I think a lot of that is due to fans aren't watching other teams as much, or they're putting more stock into their own team's bullpen. If you see the Giants bullpen blow game, you kind of laugh at them. If you see the Dodgers bullpen blow game, it's something that's happening consistently and the sky's falling and everything's the worst. So the bullpen's always an issue, but I also think Friedman is going to do stuff to address it and make sure they have at least a capable group in October. But until it actually happens, I think it is going to be a worry.
And I think one thing that's interesting with the bullpen is that could almost, I mean, it's not, the odds aren't high, but it could almost be solved potentially internally. Obviously, with Brusdar Graterol coming back, I think he's a safer bet than maybe somebody like Blake Treinen, who we haven't seen pitch in multiple years. But if Graterol comes back and pitches the way you expected, if Treinen is 75% of what he was, that is still a win for the Dodgers. But it was, so you're more worried then about the bullpen than the bottom half of the line, or not the bottom half, but the bottom of the lineup, because you've been very outspoken about those group of players down there.
Well, they're going to trade for Willy Adames.
Oh, that's right.
Andy Pajes is here, so that's all going to work out.
Okay.
I do have concerns about the group of players they have now. At the same time, I think Outman and Lux are both going to be better than what they've shown, even if they're not elite. And you don't need them to be amazing. You just need them to be league average. And I have some faith that they can get to that point. So I'm not fully out on them. I have my concerns, but the bullpen, I think, is maybe the more pressing thing, especially because the top of the lineup can help carry the bottom of the lineup more. If you don't have a bullpen, there's no one that can really carry it unless the starting pitchers go 8 innings, and that's just not reasonable. So it's close, but I'm giving the edge to the bullpen because we see how impactful bullpens can be in October.
Okay, fair enough. Our final topic for tonight, before we get to some questions, is on Walker Buehler. So he's scheduled for another rehab start. This one's going to be with Oklahoma City, but they're on the road. They're going to be in Albuquerque, which is a little interesting because typically I feel like the Dodgers, whenever they send a pitcher specifically out on a rehab assignment, it's typically if OKC is at home, if Rancho Cucamonga is at home. The Tulsa Drillers, I feel like, get left out of the equation a lot of times just because of logistics. But the Dodgers were considering the Drillers for Buehler's next start because they are at home on Wednesday when he is going to be pitching again. So not only is Buehler going to be taking the mound on the road, but it'll be, like I said, in Albuquerque at the Isotope Stadium, where the automated ball strike system, otherwise known as ABS, will be in play. And that was a little bit of a trouble spot for Buehler last week in his start for OKC at home because the ABS system was being used. And there was some, it wasn't outright said, but some suggestion that was a factor in Buehler's struggles and not getting through 3 innings. But what else has Dave Roberts said? Because I know he sort of came out with some pretty strong comments one day and then backtracked it pretty quickly.
Yeah, the main thing he said was that Buehler's execution was, quote, not great, end quote, and that's what he left it at there. They want to see more from him. they just need to see one good start from him, and then they're going to talk about activating him, but he actually needs to get through that good start there. But yeah, the command wasn't there for Buehler, and Dave Roberts did mention that as well. But yeah, he needs to execute his pitches. He doesn't have the overpowering stuff anymore that's going to allow him to make more mistakes. He really has to be fine-tuned with his mechanics and his pitches there. He needs to have the command of them. He's not blowing 99 by people anymore. He's going to be sitting more around 94. And that's just, the Dodgers are going to have to live with that. He can probably still make somewhat of an impact. I don't see him as an elite starter anymore at this point. I've spoken about that a lot. I think he can be a solid number 4 or number 3. And you hope for more, but yeah, we need to actually see it. Coming back from 2 Tommy John surgeries is really tough to do. Not many pitchers do it. There's been a few, so like it's not totally unrealistic, but I haven't necessarily been encouraged by what we've seen.
And I think another thing that was interesting from Dave is he did say that Buehler's execution was, like you said, quote, not good, but then he came out and also said that his stuff was arguably the best that they have seen it. I assume like on the rehab assignment, not necessarily at Buehler's peak. And I know then we were like amongst our staff, we were sort of texting about that because there is a little bit of a difference in opinion of where Buehler should be, where he could potentially get to. And so I was giving you and Scott a hard time saying, his spin rate and all that was up and Dave was right. But yeah, it will be interesting to see. What do you think Buehler needs to do in his start for Oklahoma City this week for that to be sort of his last one and then basically his next start would be with the Dodgers? Because I think the bar is pretty low. I think if he gets through like 4 innings, maybe faces a batter in the 5th and just doesn't give up a bunch of runs, my assumption is they'll say, okay, like that's enough. Like you can come back. Partly because Bobby Miller's on the IL right now.
I'm not sure it's about the runs as much as how many pitches he throws and how well he commands his pitches, and then like the swing and miss and what they see from the actual stuff. The AAA tends to be kind of a hitter's league, especially with the league the Dodgers are playing in, or their minor league team is playing in. It's very favorable to hitters. It's kind of like every stadium is Coors Field out there. So I'm not sure they're focused about the results as much as wanting to see him get through the amount of innings they want to see from him with about 90 pitches or so, have some swing and miss stuff, and be able to command his pitches. If he goes out and throws like 60 or 70% strikes, I think that'll be more encouraging to them. But he was at the 50% mark last game, and if he does that again, he's going to go on another rehab assignment. Is
there going to be the ABS? You think because Buehler, I think it was late last year or at some point last year, he was on the podcast show that he does. I forget the name, so I apologize to them. He kind of argued, or not argued, but he said he was a fan of the ABS system. He didn't necessarily think it would translate to the majors right away, but he thought it went well. And again, I know not that was blamed for his struggles, if you will, last week. But do you think if there's any sort of hiccup in his outing this week, the ABS, his opinion of it might change?
It's certainly a good excuse, I'll say, without necessarily saying it's an excuse. But like at the same time, you could also blame an umpire for your struggles in the zone. Like, I don't know. I don't think too much of it. I am pro robot umpire, and I will keep pushing that, at least getting the challenge system into the league. So, yeah, I'm sure Buehler's opinion might change depending on how his start goes. If he's striking out everyone and pitching well and everything's a strike, it's going to be the best system in the world. And if he's not, then maybe it's the worst system, and we need to bring back normal umpires.
Yeah. So, well, that's where things stand for Buehler. His next rehab start, potentially his final one, back with Oklahoma City on the road as they play the Albuquerque Isotopes. And we'll have a summary of how that sort of went, and potentially even some highlight videos, clips kind of pieced together from that start. If you haven't seen that on our YouTube page already, we do have Buehler's previous outings uploaded, so you could definitely check that out. The last one, like we said, wasn't so great, but the others before that were a little bit better. All right, let's answer some questions now. And if, as a reminder, if you could just start it with the word question in all caps, that makes it easier for Blake and I to pick them out. And while we wait for those to sort of fill in, Blake, I want to give you a chance to let everybody know how good my food takes are, because I've turned you on to Lazy Dog, and now I helped you find the best food item at Dodger Stadium.
Yeah, I'll give you credit for those. I still don't agree with all your takes, but I'm not sure if you'll admit it, but I do feel like our takes are usually pretty similar overall food-wise. And then Jeff and Daniel are kind of in their own world together. And then Scott is like, doesn't eat food or something. Like he's just over there eating lettuce. So yeah, I think that's kind of the tiers of our staff there.
Okay, fair enough. Here we have some questions. Well, before we get to the questions, should we tell everybody what the best food item is at Dodger Stadium?
Oh, did you not mention it?
No, I didn't
Right,
mention. I just
okay,
alluded to it.
Yeah, the carne asada potato back behind right field there. Best value, and it might not be the best like tasting item, but I think it is close enough to the top where, for the value wise, like it is by far the best thing you can get at the stadium.
Yeah, I agree. I had it. They unveiled it, I'm pretty sure, last year during the NLDS, so that was when I had it. And there was another item on the menu for the postseason that they had added that I wanted to try, but I don't really remember what happened in the playoffs last year, so I never got back to Dodger Stadium after game 2.
You don't remember driving out there to Arizona and the Dodgers getting swept and then driving back the next day?
Hey, we saw how I'm hanging on to that is we saw Lance Lynn basically make history. How many people can say that?
It is true.
All right. Let's get to these questions. Michael Negretti says, does Andy Pages stay up with the Dodgers, or does he get sent down at some point this season? I know you sort of alluded to it earlier. I think it would be short of, if Pages goes on a tear before Hayward is back, then I think he would have bought himself more time. But other than that, I feel if his production is sort of inconsistent or not really off the charts, that just kind of by process of elimination and him having minor league options still will result in getting sent back to Oklahoma City. But my guess is he would then, be back up again at some point after that, before September.
Yeah.
Let's see what else we have here.
Someone asked how much the potato is. I think it was like $18 or $19 after tax.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Noisy Ninja 91 says, what are the chances they try Lux at shortstop at least once in the regular season?
0, I think, at this point. Like, I don't think you're gonna mess with it. He's playing well at second base and comfortable there. You have Miguel Rojas and Mookie Betts who can handle short, and Chris Taylor and Kike Hernandez. Like, just leave Lux where he's comfortable and playing well.
Yeah, I agree. Here's a question from Ederico. There's obviously in light of the talk about the bullpen and what's gone wrong, he says, despite the struggles, are there relievers or one reliever who has impressed you? His picks are Phillips and Hudson. And he also wants to shine a light on James Paxton, who has been better than he expected.
Yeah, Big Maple is my guy. I was hyping him up the moment they signed him. So I think me and Scott did a video talking about Paxton and Teoscar Hernandez for a bit. So I recommend going to watch that one if you didn't see it. But yeah, Paxton's been really good for what they needed there. The bullpen, I think Evan Phillips is just kind of like, we know who he is at this point. I wouldn't say he's necessarily impressing me because that's just who he is. He's really good. I've been impressed with Daniel Hudson coming back and being really good overall. He had the home run issue, but it's better than what I thought he would probably be this quickly, at least. And then I think I was also really impressed by Ricky Vanasco when he came up. I wish he would have got more of a run there, but unfortunately they needed other pitchers and he had options and it just didn't work out. I'm sure we'll see him again at some point. And I guess I'll just give a shout out to Scott's guy, Nabil Chrismat. Like, he looked pretty good. I'm not necessarily as high on him as Scott is, but it was impressive.
Yeah, Scott, he's been texting us that he might have a new bullpen circle of trust type article written here sometime soon. But Nabil Chrismat is in that group for him, just not necessarily for the Dodgers right now because of roster decisions. This question is from Judy. She says, I know Blake thinks relievers are all volatile, but any realistic concerns about Brazier right now? I think you probably have very significant concerns with him.
Yeah, I mean, I think his velocity is down, if I'm not mistaken. If you want me to double check that, I can. But, I mean, I didn't love the signing to begin with. I was okay with it because they needed another reliever, and it wasn't the worst deal. I think it was what, $4.5 million a year or something for him. Like, it's
In
fine.
2 years, right?
Yeah, 2 years, $8 million total, or $9 million total, or something like that. But I don't hate that aspect of it. I didn't think he was going to repeat last year, and I think we're kind of seeing a bit of an overcorrection from what he was doing last year to what he's doing this year. He'll probably be better moving forward, but if he isn't better moving forward, like, it wouldn't shock me either. So, yeah, I mean, I am concerned.
Here we have a super chat from MMA Voice. Have you guys considered running a game companion stream? Basically, he's saying stream during the game. We have sort of thought about it. We were doing our watch-alongs on Playback last year, but Playback, or 2 years ago, I forgot. Playback has some issues with MLB licensing and not necessarily being able to stream the games and stuff like that. So we put a pause on that. The downside to if we were to do a companion stream, as MMA Voice is asking for, is it's basically, it would be through YouTube and you would be looking at like Blake and myself like this, and wouldn't necessarily be the game on your screen. You would have to like be watching it on TV, maybe on mute or low volume, and then listening to us talk. So I don't know. Baseball is a long season. You guys might get tired of us, but it is something we're considering and sort of kicking around, maybe for a big game, a big series, or potentially the postseason. It's something we could possibly do.
I know it's not the same, but me and Scott have also thrown around the idea of some like Q&A sessions where instead of starting with the normal show, we just kind of interact with everyone in the chat and answer questions, and probably take some off Twitter and Facebook too. So we're trying to workshop some new things and planning out new ideas as well.
Yeah. Let's see what else. I had a question here. It was about... now I lost it, I think. Oh, here we go. TQT says, I love the Paxton signing, but he has lost 2 ticks off his fastball, and his overall stuff and command seems to be very lacking. Is he going to be this year's David Peralta? So it is worth noting that the Dodgers did push Paxton back into the National Series upcoming this week. Instead of having him start Sunday, they ended up moving Glasnow up. So they did give him an extra day of rest. I know Dave Roberts kind of explained it more as just not having Glasnow go 1 week between starts, right? Rather than there being like significant concern with Paxton. But to TQT's point, is there any reason to worry with maybe some of the other stuff?
I think there's always reason to worry when a pitcher loses velocity. I mean, I don't think any of us are expecting James Paxton to be like the ace of the staff or anything. Like, he's the number 5, maybe even number 6 starter on the team when Walker Buehler or Bobby Miller are back. Like, you got to kind of consider your expectations on that scale. He's essentially a depth pitcher for this team. He's limited runs so far, and I know with how he's pitching, that's probably unsustainable. But I do think he'll kind of tick up a little bit better. I don't think he's as bad as like the underlying numbers show so far, and he's probably worse than what the traditional stats like ERA show this far. So I think it's fair to have concern about him, but at the same time, like, you kind of got to be happy with the starts you've gotten from him so far. Aside, even when he walked 8 guys in that outing, I think he allowed like 3 runs or something. Like, you can live with that from your number 5 starter. And of course, you don't want to see him continue walking 8 guys, and he definitely needs to cut those walks down. That's been the biggest issue for him this year. But I mean, he's a number 5 starter. It is what it is, kind of. And David Peralta was very bad last year. Like, if James Paxton is that bad, we can address it, but he's had 3 starts so far.
Noah Ortega says, what are your thoughts about a Bo Bichette trade at the deadline? Jays are in 4th place of their division. I know Bo Bichette is a name you've kicked around a little bit, but is not necessarily considered as realistic of an option. But do you see the Blue Jays maybe being sellers at the trade deadline?
I don't think so. I think their team is going to be okay enough to at least not sell at this point. I'm looking up Bichette's contract real quick. He signed through 2025 at $11 million a year. So, like, even if they were sellers, I don't think they're going to trade him. I think it was Juan Toribio in the offseason said the Dodgers looked into a Bo Bichette trade, or at least were kind of kicking the tires with the Blue Jays a bit, but it was probably more about due diligence than anything else, like actually trying to get a trade done. They're probably like, hey, we're looking for a shortstop. Any chance you'd trade Bichette? And they said no. And then it kind of gets reported as they checked in on Bo Bichette and they're interested in him. So, yeah, I mean, I would love it. He's kind of been not great this year, so maybe you can buy low on him a little bit. But yeah, I just don't really see it happening realistically.
Yeah, I agree. All right, we'll answer a few more here. Just as a reminder, if you could start it with question in all caps, that helps us pick it out. Here, GI says, will Mookie play a game in right field this season? I don't see him starting. Well, I guess I wouldn't be fully surprised if he starts there like once or twice, but outside of that, not really. And then maybe if it's, extra innings and the Dodgers have needed to pinch hit for different players and move different guys around, if he has to kick out into right field because, Rojas is off the bench and Lux is out of the game or whatever the case may be, then fine. But there's not going to be any significant playing time for Mookie in right field anymore. And I think he likes it that way.
I don't think there's any chance we see him out there in right field.
At all? Like not even...
If you're playing Mookie out there, that's to get like Gavin Lux and Miguel Rojas into the lineup and taking Jason Hayward out or Andy Pajes, whoever's out there, or potentially getting like Kike Hernandez into the game as well. Like Dave Roberts said the team is at their best when Mookie's at shortstop right now, and I just kind of think that's how they're going to stay with it.
That's fair. But hey, 15-inning games do happen even with the ghost runner and pitch clock.
Okay, we'll set the over-under on 1.5.
Like just total games played?
Yeah.
I am probably taking the under on that. I think it does probably only happen once.
Yeah.
All right, let's see if there's anything else in here. I did see somebody say they would get tired of us doing watch-along games. So we appreciate the honesty, and that's our concern. We don't want you guys to don't want to bore anybody. And now there's a lot of discussion about broadcasts in general. I see Apple's Friday night broadcast not getting much love. I haven't had a chance to fully read it, but I think the Peacock games are going to be ending, at least on Peacock. I think MLB still wants to do the early Sunday starts, but not necessarily on Peacock, so that'll be interesting. Blake, if you saw something, let me know.
We can throw up this one.
Okay.
I saw a few questions, so we'll throw those up.
Okay, go ahead. So Noisy Ninja 91 says, what kind of game viewers are you guys? Do you get super hyped or keep it low key? Well, when we're in the press box, there's no cheering, so that's a working environment. Blake, but if you're at home, what kind of viewer are you if you're watching the Dodgers play a heated game against your Diamondbacks?
I am like the same I am right now. I don't really get too loud or anything or super heated. Or Scott is that guy, if you want to know who on our staff is like that. Scott gets hyped up, and I was joking, like he's the guy who claps and yells good eye after every ball thrown to a Dodger hitter, or like, come on, Blue, that was a strike when the pitcher's on the mound. And he was like, yeah, I'm definitely that guy. So yeah, I'm pretty low key.
Yeah, I think I'm definitely on that side as well. I think during the playoffs is when maybe like get a little bit more animated, but that also depends on if I think the team has a legitimate chance at winning. Whereas like last year, I thought they were going to beat the Diamondbacks, but then I knew like it just was bad. Their October run was going to be pretty short. Let's see. Here's a question from Judy. She says, thoughts on Michael Grove? He seems to be doing okay out of the bullpen. He's had some better appearances recently than he did to begin the season. I think one of them was still where he got stretched out or pushed for multiple innings against the Twins, but I think that's also been kind of a lot of the issue is how the Dodgers have sort of used Grove, and there seems to be a pretty clear connection with if he has to face left-handed hitters, if he has to throw multiple innings, that's where there seems to be some trouble spots. But like, have you seen Grove maybe getting on track?
Yeah, I like Grove as a one-inning reliever facing righties. It's just I don't like him when they try and push him to 2 or 3 innings, and then he has to face a lefty or two in there. Like that's when it gets bad. He needs to kind of just be able to throw his slider a lot versus righties, and he'll be fine.
Yeah. Here, TQT has another question. Dodgers have the highest K rate with runners in scoring position. Do you think it eventually catches up to them? Having Teo, Muncy, and Outman all bunched together kills so many rallies. Where do you fall in kind of the runners and scoring position thing? Is it blown out of proportion? Is it reason for some concern?
I think there's a lot to it, and I think it's a very complex answer that I don't know if I can articulate quite well right now. The general thing is the teams that score the most runs leave the most runners on base because they're getting the most runners on base to begin with, and that's just kind of how it goes. The teams with high on base percentages are going to score a lot of runs, and they're going to leave a lot of guys on base because baseball's hard. At the same time, I do have some concern about the lack of putting the ball in play when runners are in scoring position. You have to be able to put the ball in play there. Like most of the time, Teoscar Hernandez and Max Muncy are going to be good hitters, but there are times when you don't necessarily need the home run ball, and there are times when you do need it. So I think they're going to help each other out with the home runs. Like it's going to benefit them there, but there's going to be some patches where you're like, man, we just needed that ball in play and you struck out on 3 or 4 pitches. So I think that is definitely part of it. I don't love not having a necessarily contact hitter in that part of the lineup there, but Dave Roberts was also asked about that, and he basically said, like, good hitters, good bat to ball skills, they're going to be the ones who are better with runners in scoring position, and the guys that aren't as good with their bat to ball skills usually tend to be worse with runners in scoring position. And this is kind of the team the Dodgers have constructed. I think they're going to score a lot of runs still, and it's going to be okay overall. But it is kind of a concern, and maybe you might have to make somewhat of a lineup change or a lineup tweak there, just moving guys around so they're not all bunched up there together. But I think overall it'll probably even out more so than I think most people would say it will at this moment with their recent struggles. But like we saw today, they played very well. They scored 10 runs. They had no problems. And I think we're going to see that more often than not.
I agree. I think it's ultimately won't be something that needs to be like a huge concern, but it's been a recurring theme for this team, no matter kind of like, yes, there are a couple core players that are still around, but the roster has really changed. So it can be a discussion for a different time. But if this season doesn't necessarily end the way the Dodgers hope, and if their hitting with runners in scoring position lacks again, I think for me at least, it'll be interesting to see if there's maybe some internal organizational evaluation that sort of happens. Because at that point, like I said, the players have changed, hitting coaches have pretty much stayed the same. So does that need to maybe potentially change?
I will say though, like last year they had more contact hitters and less power than they have this year. And I think it was still like an issue hitting with runners in scoring position that at least was talked about among people. So like, I don't know. It's a tough, complex thing. Like we all know Teoscar Hernandez is a good hitter, but he's also going to strike out a lot. And you kind of have to take the good with the bad with them. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's really tough to answer. We'll just kind of have to see, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, there's not one reason. That's what makes it so difficult. I mean, there's not even two things, right? Like it is like you said, it's a complex issue with so many different factors involved, including maybe like opposing pitchers, whoever you happen to be facing in those situations. All right, let's do this question from Michael Carrillo, and then if there's one or two more after that, we'll get to those, and then
I saw one more.
Okay. So Michael Carrillo says, why has no one questioned the bullpen's average age is 36? You can't have a bullpen that old and injury prone and expect to succeed. You need youth sprinkled in there. A lot of old man hating in this question from Michael. Like, how concerned are you with the age? I mean, yes, obviously the older the players are, the more injury prone they can be. But the flip side to that is, they also have experience.
Yeah, I mean, their bullpen strategy has kind of been interesting. They definitely threw a lot of money at veteran high-priced relievers, which is something they haven't traditionally have done. I mean, they paid Treinen $10 million a year for a few years, and now he's on his $1 million deal. But then they went out and they re-signed Joe Kelly for I think around $9 million. They gave Brazier money. Like it's a non-Andrew Friedman type strategy to build like that. We haven't really seen them do that. Usually they try and find more under the radar guys, and like Scott brought up in our chat today, they basically gave away Brian Hudson, and he has been doing phenomenal with the Brewers. So it's not really Friedman's MO to build like this, and it was a little confusing to me. I think they have some youth there, like Ricky Vanasco is a guy we named earlier. Kyle Hurt could be a guy who makes an impact, and that'll kind of sprinkle in some more of the youth. But yeah, I mean, I have some concerns about the current bullpen, like we said earlier.
All right, like this isn't a question, but a comment from Jaime Gonzalez. He says our bullpen is vintage, not old. That's a pretty good way of describing it. Blake, what was the question you saw? If you want to throw it up on the screen. So this one's from Joe Punk. If Buehler has a good season, should the Dodgers re-sign? If so, what is a realistic contract? And they're asking for both years and money. I am terrible at this. Blake, you have a hat on, so we're going to call it your GM hat for the purpose of this exercise. Buehler, if he's a productive pitcher, not an ace, not necessarily an all-star, what type of deal could you see him getting after this year?
I think he would probably still be looking at like a 1-year kind of prove-it deal. Like we saw with pitchers this offseason, it was a little tougher for them to get paid, and I don't think Buehler will have the innings necessary to prove that he's kind of back, or at least like worth investing in long-term. I don't think he's going to have any chance of coming back to the Dodgers. They have Dustin May coming back. They have Tony Gonsolin coming back. They have River Ryan in the minor leagues who's going to be ready by next year. They're probably going to have Roki Sasaki. They're going to have Shohei Ohtani coming back. They have Bobby Miller. They already re-signed Tyler Glasnow for the long term. Like, they have a lot of options. I didn't even name Gavin Stone there and Landon Knack. You'll probably see someone get traded at some point from that entire group I named. So, yeah, I just don't really see any room for Buehler coming back. And I think there's another team out there that's going to be more desperate for pitching that'll end up paying him.
And don't forget, they still are stretching out Michael Grove as a starter. Technically, he's that. Yeah. Ryan Yarbrough is somebody who could start too.
Kyle Hurt too. They're not giving up on him as a starter.
Yeah, they've plenty of starting pitching depth.
Nick Frasso coming back too next year.
That's true, but we have seen in the past that you can never have enough starting pitching. So, but I do agree. I mean, I think the odds of, even if Buehler is willing to do a 1-year deal, the chances of it being with the Dodgers, I don't see as being very high, assuming that there isn't like literally, 5 injuries between now and that point, which obviously, knock on wood for everybody's case, doesn't happen.
Here's a fun, infuriating question.
Oh, yeah, I did see this one. So GI says, O'Neal Cruz or Yordan Alvarez, which trade do you undo?
So for starters, it's Yordan. Like, without a doubt, he's a far better player than O'Neal Cruz, even though Cruz plays the position the Dodgers need. They got, for people who don't remember, it was Josh Fields from the Astros for Yordan Alvarez and Tony Watson from the Pirates for O'Neal Cruz. The Dodgers had both of those guys. And I think a lot of people weren't as high on Cruz at the time. He's kind of like a hit or miss prospect. Like, people knew he had potential, but no one really saw him getting to that point necessarily. He wasn't very highly ranked or rated or anything. And I still feel like O'Neal Cruz is a bit overrated. He's kind of a platoon player, not amazing at defense or anything. Like, you're not missing that from him. But Yordan is one of the top 5 hitters in baseball. So not having him kind of hurts. But at the same time, when he came up, he couldn't really play defense, and the Dodgers didn't have the DH at the time. And when they traded him, it was before he ever played a game in the system. Like, they signed him and then pretty much immediately traded him. So it wasn't really as much of a scouting failure there. It just seems more like the Astros kind of got lucky or had more info on him to begin with.
Yeah, that, and I think there was some confusion with the Yordan Alvarez trade and maybe some other planning pre-agreement stuff, but that's all kind of been speculation. But if you want to look it up, you could find it. If you Google, a few things, you'll find a bunch of history about the Dodgers and Yordan Alvarez.
I will say I was really high on Fields at the time of that trade. I thought the Dodgers had their next relief ace. Like, his underlying numbers were really good.
Like, one day you'll learn to put the computer away and look. Trust your eyes, and trust your gut, the way Dave Roberts did today with Tyler Glasnow.
Yeah, for real. That one disappointed me a bit.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for us tonight. Our plan again is to be back on Tuesday night with another live show. The Dodgers do play early, but I think we might be doing that post-game show probably closer to like 8 or 9 potentially Pacific. I think it'll be myself and Scott. Not 100% sure. We're trying to figure out whose schedule best lines up for that. Then, of course, we have our live show Friday with Jeff and Anthony. And then I think myself and Blake will be back a week from tonight. And we're also putting up, like I said, daily videos throughout the week, a little bit shorter, sometimes clipped from these longer shows. Blake and Scott have a pretty good thing going where they kind of give you a different feel on Thursdays. So, like I said, definitely subscribe to our YouTube channel, ring the notification bell. That way you get notified as soon as our videos and live shows start and go live. And if you're listening on podcast, just a reminder to subscribe there as well. Rate and review us. And yeah, that's going to be all. That again, that was Blake. I'm Matthew, and we will see you guys next time.